In Matthew chapter 24, the disciples asked Christ for signs of the times, which will help them to understand and to be prepared for the second coming. And Jesus mentioned some signs of the times to them in the following verses, after verse 3, when they asked these three questions. And one of the signs that Jesus mentioned was pestilences. Notice with me on the screen what it says here from the Daily Mail, January 23rd, 2020. It feels like the what? What are the words? The end of the world. Third Chinese city is put in lockdown, and Wuhan is turned into ground zero. As experts warn, coronavirus outbreak is mutating and could spread at levels not seen since SARS crisis. This is very similar to what Christ told us. Notice carefully with me what the Bible tells us here in Joel chapter 1, verse 15. Sanctify ye a what? A fast, called a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land into the house of the Lord your God. Why? And cry unto the Lord, alas, for the day of the Lord is at hand, and as a destruction from the Almighty shall it come. The day of the Lord is at hand. As we see these things transpiring so rapidly and increasing, and keep in mind, they mention that city there was in lockdown and is at the present moment in lockdown. Notice with me what Spirit of Prophecy tells us here. Famines will increase, pestilences will sweep away thousands. Dangers are all around us, from the powers without and satanic workings within. But the restraining power of God is now being what? Exercised. This is from Manuscript Releases 19,382. The signs of the times are all around us. Satan, as the Bible says in Revelation chapter 12, verse 12, that he is coming down with great power, because he knoweth that he has but a short time. Men are causing many of these deadly viruses in order to control the masses, in order to impose lockdown, martial laws on cities, as is taking place right now in China. Notice carefully with me. This says from Business Insider, Wuhan, China is about to be quarantined as the coronavirus outbreak grows. The city has what? 3 million more residents than New York City. Let's pause. Now, I used to live in New York City, and New York City has a lot of people. Now, this city that is under quarantine or lockdown or martial law, let's put it this way, has 3 million more people than New York City. Can you imagine being in such a city and not be able to go anywhere? Notice carefully with me. A mysterious coronavirus that originated in Wuhan, China, has killed 17 people and infected more than 544. The outbreak has spread to at least 6 other countries, including the US. On Wednesday, local disease control authorities in Wuhan issued an order to shut down the city's public transportation, notice carefully, including buses, trains, ferries, and the airport. The Wuhan coronavirus can pass from human to human, so officials are working to stop it from spreading further. And I see a sinister plot here to control the masses. I see the enemy of soul working here to bring about a thing, a condition of the world that we were told in Revelation chapter 13. Soon and very soon, who is going to be in lockdown in some cities because they did not take heed to leave the cities when God has been given warning after warnings to leave the city. Some Seventh-day Adventists are going to be in lockdown. And keep in mind, this is the same China that has concentration camps right now in their country. The same China that has banned evangelism. Notice next article here. This says Mexico and Colombia may have their what? First coronavirus cases as the contagious illness that has killed 17 spreads from China to at least 531 people around the world. This is from Mail Online, January 22nd, 2020. After official appeals to stay calm, notice, many Chinese were canceling trips, buying face masks, avoiding public places such as cinemas and shopping centers, and even turning to an online plague simulation game or watching disaster movie, The Flu, as a way to cope. Global precautions to prevent or slow the virus spread are ramping up worldwide. Now, if they could lock that city there in China, which has again 3 million people more than New York City, and they saying this thing is spreading worldwide. So what is coming, or what might come, as we just read a moment ago? God, according to Revelation chapter 7, is still holding back the winds of strife, but they are being let loose little by little. Notice next article here from CBS News. Wuhan quarantines how many people? 11 million people as coronavirus spreads. Watch this clip here I'm about to show for you. In this clip, they are calling this a global emergency. Notice carefully.
All right, tonight, 5 major American airports are ramping up screenings of passengers coming in from Wuhan, China, a city that is now on lockdown because of the spreading coronavirus. The World Health Organization is having emergency meetings as they decide whether to label this a global emergency. The death toll has spiked to 17.
Then the next clip is going to confirm for us that it is 11 million people that are in lockdown within that one city in China. Notice carefully.
Ramy Inocencio is in China tonight reporting on a city quarantined.
Just one day before China's massive Lunar New Year holiday, as hundreds of millions crisscross the country to celebrate with families, an unprecedented act. Today, the entire city of Wuhan, population 11 million and ground zero for the coronavirus epidemic, is on lockdown.
The next clip is going to tell us there is checkpoint everywhere. That sounds like martial law. That is martial law. Notice carefully with me.
Every mode of transport out of the city will grind to a halt. Planes, trains, buses, ferries, and subways.
We are at the Wuhan airport.
Our CBS News team left Wuhan just hours before the shocking announcement. In the airport, nearly every single person wore a mask, reminiscent of the SARS crisis of 2003. When we landed in Beijing, airline workers scanned us for fevers.
Well, you just saw that. We just got our temperature checks.
With similar scenes playing out at airports in and out of the region, even as far as Moscow and Lagos, Nigeria. In Wuhan, behind-the-scenes footage shows extreme measures being taken to contain the virus. But reports of confirmed cases continue to rise, now reaching 6 countries, including the United States, where a man in his 30s remains in isolation at this hospital north of Seattle.
And then the next clip is going to tell us that they are considering, the health officials, the governments of this world are considering to call this a global emergency.
And as more people get sick, the World Health Organization has added an extra day of talks to decide on whether this epidemic constitutes a global emergency. As for here in China, it's already taken decisive and some would say very startling action that begins really in the next few hours.
Does that mean the same thing we see happening in China right now will happen to a nation near us, to a city near us? Remember, they said what's happening in China, the way China is cracking down on Christians, it's a model to the rest of the world. Notice carefully with me the next article. This tells us here from The Guardian. Thursday, January 22nd, 2020. Coronavirus, panic and anger in where? In Wuhan, as China orders city into lockdown. What happened? Notice, supermarket shelves are empty and face masks have sold out as residents of city at the center of the deadly virus hoard supplies and retreat inside. Residents and all government workers are now required to wear face masks while in public spaces. When I saw the news, one person says, when I woke up, I felt like I was going to go crazy. This is a little too late now. The government's measures are not enough. Not enough. What happened there? Now you have the supermarkets. Food are running out. Again, what was the counsel that God had given to his people? We were given a plain counsel to make preparation for the crisis ahead of us. We should not be found ourselves living in the cities. We should be placing ourselves where we can grow our own food, because we do not know when the stores will be shut down and they will run out of food, as in the case of this city here. These folks did not expect this, but it happened to them all of a sudden. Notice carefully. I am a bit panicked because before the government said it wasn't serious, so no one thought it was a big deal, said Wang Ying, 26 years old. Then this morning, notice, Wuhan was suddenly, what's the word? Suddenly sealed off. I think the government's early warnings were not enough. Well, they depended on the government, and the government deceived them. Now they woke up the following day, they find themselves locked up. They could not go anywhere. Notice the video here. Now they have to rely on these so-called health officials, and there is again a sinister plot behind this. They fabricated this whole thing. They came up with that virus to control people. Notice again.
The primary issue is to limit human-to-human transmission, to reduce secondary infections, especially amongst close contact and particularly in healthcare environments. We need to prevent transmission through amplification events and super spreading events, and obviously prevent further international spread. We at this time must particularly counter misinformation that may affect people's behavior.
Transparency is very, very commendable, and we really appreciate, and we want that to continue. And today the committee members have witnessed that during the presentation from China. And if we're going to keep the world safe, transparency is number one.
What should be the call now as we see these things taking place? We should be wise as serpent, as Christ says in the book of Matthew, chapter 24, the book again the chapter that deals with the signs of the times. Jesus says in verse 15 and in verse 16, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, let him who read, let him understand. Then he says, let them which are in Judea flee. Where? To the mountains. Meaning we need to be in the country making preparation for the final crisis. Notice what Spirit of Prophecy says. Out of the cities, out of the cities. This is the message the Lord has been giving me. the earthquakes will come, the floods will come, and we are not to establish ourselves where? In the wicked cities, where the enemy is served in everywhere, and where God is so often, what's the word? Forgotten. The Lord desires that we shall have clear spiritual eyesight. We must be quick to discern the peril that would attend the establishment of institutions in these wicked cities. We must make wise plans to warn the cities, and at the same time live where we can shield our children and ourselves from the contaminating and demoralizing influences so prevalent in these places. What's the called? Out of the city. Why? Because those things could happen suddenly without us expecting them. Isn't that what's happening in Wuhan? Here is another reason why this is urgent. Out of the city. Notice, next article says, coronavirus. 3 Chinese cities locked down and Beijing festivities scraped. That was from The Guardian, January 23rd. Today, 2020. Now, instead of just one city, now it's spreading to other cities. Remember, what was the population of Wuhan, China? 11 million. Now they have added 2 more cities or 3 more cities, whatever the number is. So what's the population now? Notice, 3 Chinese cities with a total population of what? 20 million have been put on lockdown, and Beijing has cancelled a number of major public events in an attempt to contain the spread of a deadly coronavirus outbreak. May I share with you another reason why out of the city's message is urgent? Notice carefully with me what it says here. Traffic grinds to a halt as highways are blocked in Wuhan. Watch the video.
这武汉不让出去了，出省的都封住了，不让走了。去孝感的封了啊，去孝感的不让走，全部堵死了的。
May I also share one more video with you? Notice what it says. Wuhan locals fight over food with the city on what? On lockdown. Notice. May I also now share with you a warning that is found within the pages of the Spirit of Prophecy. Notice with me what it says there. From Great Controversy 433, men cannot with impunity reject the what again? The warning which God in mercy sends to them. God sends this warning in mercy to help us to be prepared. But because God lingers, because He is long-suffering, some among us do not want to take heed about the urgency of leaving the cities. Notice carefully. A message was sent from heaven to the world in Noah's day, and their salvation depended upon the manner in which they treated that message. Their salvation was dependent in the manner that they treated that message. Likewise, our salvation is dependent in the manner that we receive the urgency for this time, the message for this time. Notice carefully. Because they rejected the warning, the Spirit of God was withdrawn from the sinful race, and they perish in the waters of the flood. In the time of Abraham, mercy ceased to plead with the guilty inhabitants of Sodom, and all but Lot with his wife and 2 daughters were consumed by the fire sent down from heaven. So in the days of Christ, the Son of God declared to the unbelieving Jews of that generation, your house is what? Is left unto you desolate, looking down to the last days. This is our time now, the last days. Notice, The same infinite power declares concerning those who receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. For this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned, who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. As they reject the teachings of his word, God did what? Withdraws his spirit and leaves them to the deceptions which they love. Brothers and sisters, we do not want to be found wanted. We do not want God to remove his spirit from us. But he will do so if we constantly rejecting the warnings that he has been sending to us. If we keep doing this, then the same thing that happened to these folks here, as we just read a moment ago. They said they believe the officials, the government, everything was fine. But they woke up the following day and they were stuck. They could not get out. The Bible tells us we need to prepare ourselves so that we can meet our God. Prepare to meet thy God, O Israel, because the signs of the times are telling us that the second coming of Jesus Christ is imminent. God bless you.